Imagine nervously peering over the ship's prow, convinced you're about to plunge off a cosmic waterfall. One small splash for man, one giant drop for mankind. Such was the horror supposedly haunting cartoonish ancient mariners. If you buy the popular myth, quivering at the map's edge, sure the next wave would sweep them into a celestial abyss. Sea monsters? Pfft! Now it was outer space they feared falling into. But let's reel in that tall tale. The idea that pre-Columbian sailors universally panicked over falling off a flat Earth is more 19th century bedtime story than medieval nightmare. By the 6th century BCE, clever Greeks like Pythagoras and later Eratosthenes had already nailed Earth's roundness with actual math. Who knew? Real sailors trusted stars over superstition. Their nightmares were pirates, storms, and an unending beer shortage, not edge-of-the-world wipeouts. So no, those medieval maps dotted with wobbly dragons still showed a globe. If Earth were flat, at least your marbles wouldn't get lost. They'd just roll to the edge, a bonus treasure hunt for bored deckhands. In reality, the only things ever in danger of falling off were the crew's rations and their patience. Moving beyond misconceptions about the world's shape, let's consider the Viking approach to exploration. Picture a Viking ship barreling through fog, powered not just by brute biceps and Thor-worthy audacity, but by brains worthy of Norse NASA. That classic image, wild-haired berserkers crashing onto continents with nothing but raw muscle and a muttered oops fjord if they missed Greenland. Total myth. In reality, Viking voyagers were less rage-fueled battering rams and more oceanic tech geeks. They read the seas like ancient Google Maps, wielding sunstones, sun compasses, and an uncanny knack for decoding wind, waves, and wildlife. These navigators keyed in on seabirds, whales, even the color of the water to spy land, while their sleek longships sliced through open waters. Not just because everyone was rowing like they'd skipped happy hour. Sure, a pinch of luck didn't hurt, but if raw muscle and blind hope were all it took, the North Sea would be littered with discarded helmets and forgotten war cries. Instead, archaeological digs, finding navigational gizmos and sagas, show Vikings were tech wizards long before GPS was cool. Spoiler: biceps never made the cut as official navigation currency. While Vikings relied on strength and chance, Polynesians took a different, albeit misunderstood, path across the Pacific. Picture Polynesian voyagers as cosmic lottery winners, bobbing along shipwreck style on a boat powered by pure coconut luck, tripping over islands the same way we lose TV remotes, entirely by accident. That's the legend. Ancient mariners cast adrift, occasionally greeted by paradise, and hopefully fewer spiders, playing the Pacific's ultimate game of Marco Polo. Some even joke their epic journeys were one-way tickets on the "Where did my paddle go?" express. But wait, this isn't history, it's historical slapstick. In reality, Polynesian navigators were oceanic masterminds. They harnessed stars, tracked bird flight paths, read ocean swells, and spotted distant cloud reflections like living, breathing GPS units. Take that, Google Maps. Archaeology backs this up. Settlement patterns and elaborate trade networks pepper the Pacific, all crafted by people who definitely knew exactly where they were going. Modern voyaging canoes like Hokulea, relying solely on traditional skills, have retraced these mind-boggling routes. Oral histories and shared languages prove these connections were deliberate, not accidental. Frankly, finding these islands by luck alone, you'd have better odds locating your Airbnb blindfolded and hoping for free Wi-Fi. Polynesian navigation. Less stumble, more stroke of genius. The belief in random drifting overlooks the sophisticated navigation techniques that ancient sailors employed, including the use of stars. Picture an ancient sailor squinting at the night sky, only to find it replaced by an endless, uncooperative cloud blanket. If the myth were true, ship crews would be flailing helplessly every time the stars called in sick. Legend says ancient navigators relied solely on Orion, blindly trusting their lives to a constellation, while ominous clouds lurked like maritime party poopers. If cloudy weather really grounded their voyages, Italy would still be looking for Greece. But let's not shortchange our forebears. These sailors read the environment like a well-worn map. Wind shifted their moods, wave shapes whispered secrets, seabirds plotted slick shortcuts, and the color of water tipped off nearby land like a watery post-it note. The Polynesians? They mastered wayfinding, using everything from ocean swells' shapes to the aromas drifting on the breeze. Wayfinding. The original sea smell test, proving sniffing the ocean is a legit navigational tool, not just an excuse for funky laundry. Meanwhile, Vikings got high-tech with sunstones, crystals polarizing light to reveal the hidden sun. Finally, a Norse invention with fewer axes and more optics. Mediterranean sailors sang oral maps, followed currents, and trusted landmarks, sometimes putting familiar coastlines before fickle stars. So yes, navigation was risky, a calculated gamble, not a blindfolded leap. Did cloudy nights cause sweaty palms? Absolutely. But seasoned mariners weren't just handing Neptune the keys, they had tricks aplenty stashed beneath their sails. Although stars guided ancient sailors, medieval Europeans struggled with determining longitude accurately. Imagine trying to navigate the high seas blindfolded. That's basically how medieval sailors wrestled with longitude. Popular myth paints these old-time European mariners as utterly baffled by east-west positions, which is only slightly less terrifying than being adrift with no snacks. Latitude? A piece of cake. Just eyeball the stars or sun like a nosy neighbor spying through curtains, and you're set. Longitude? That was the nautical nightmare equivalent of forgetting your Netflix password. Impossible, infuriating, and doomed to end badly. Forget the legend of expert navigators. Reality was more like a group of hopeful guessers mumbling, "I think we're somewhere. Probably." The real game-changer arrived with John Harrison's marine chronometer in the 18th century. Before that, sailors relied on dead reckoning, a method as reliable as medieval weather forecasts. Read, not at all. Getting longitude wrong meant shipwrecks, lost treasure, and surprise landings on continents they didn't even know existed. Not incompetence, just a serious lack of waterproof clocks. Had GPS existed, they'd have called it the "God Please Save Us" system. So here's to you, brave guessers, sail on. Amidst this challenge with longitude, the compass emerged, mysteriously credited as a magical invention. Imagine a band of explorers, mesmerized by a spinning needle, utterly convinced it was magic, or at least very courteous fairies, leading them north. Picture them clutching their compasses, half expecting Tinkerbell to flutter out with travel tips. Legend says the compass just appeared out of thin air, wrapped in mystery and sparkle, as if delivered by unicorn courier because maps decided to take the day off. But let's set the record straight. Ancient Chinese inventors kicked off the compass revolution over 2,000 years ago. And get this, their first compasses weren't for navigation. They were fortune-telling gadgets, more mystic than GPS. The device leisurely wandered its way to Europe, where sailors eyed it suspiciously, as if it might conjure storms, or worse, their in-laws. Superstition ran so deep some claimed magnets were carved from enchanted sheep's horns. In time, humanity cracked the code. The needle pointed to magnetic north. Not Narnia, definitely not Hogwarts, and certainly not the closest pizza joint. The mysterious force guiding explorers? Less fairy godmother, more good old-fashioned magnetism. Hats off, science. Better luck next time, fairies. Despite the compass's importance, many assumed old maps were unreliable and poorly crafted. Ever glanced at an ancient map and wondered if it doubled as a Rorschach test for pirates? One look, and you're swimming in enough doodled monsters and misplaced continents to make any sense of direction walk the plank. The legend lingers that medieval mapmakers were either hopelessly lost or had one goblet too many. If mapmaking were a drinking game, you'd be passed out by Greenland, thanks to the endless parade of sea monsters. But before you brand every old cartographer a tipsy artist, here's the scoop. They worked with what sailors brought back, a cocktail of half legend, half guesswork, and a dash of sharp observation, though often under questionable navigation stars. So Here Be Dragons wasn't so much a warning as a creative placeholder. Despite their flamboyant coastlines and generous dragon helpings, those maps were cutting-edge tech. Each sea voyage filled in the blanks, turning rough sketches into charts that helped build empires. Turns out, bad maps weren't signs of drunkenness, but daring curiosity. No GPS? No problem, unless you were in a hurry to get anywhere specific. These misconceptions extended to who participated in navigation, often thought to be exclusively men. Picture a salty sea dog, probably rocking a beard thick enough to hide a family of octopuses, commanding a ship heavy with treasure, while the ladies stay ashore, spinning yarns, both literal and figurative. Sounds like ancient history, right? Wrong. The ocean's past isn't just some testosterone-fueled, wind-whipped boys' club with questionable hygiene standards. The myth goes that women were chained to the docks, while only men braved Poseidon's beard-tugging tempests. Jason and his all-dude Argonauts didn't exactly do female seafarers any favors, turning the high seas into a strictly no-girls-allowed frat house. But history raises its flag differently. Archaeology and ancient texts reveal plenty of women who got their sea legs. Turns out sailing wasn't a Y chromosome exclusive club. Greek myths have Artemis cutting loose as a pirate. Norse sagas boast of shield maidens who sailed off for plunder after giving a polite nod to the "no girls on board" signs. Ancient Egypt and China? Oh, absolutely. Lady captains, port managers, maritime merchants aplenty. Some women even ran entire port cities, smashing the barnacle-encrusted glass ceiling with a well-thrown gantlet. So next time someone says women can't parallel park a ship, just introduce them to a Viking and her longboat. Turns out the waves were far more egalitarian than most landlubbers ever dared to be. Beyond gender roles, early sailors were also thought to be fearful, avoiding deep sea for fear of monsters. Picture yourself as an early sailor, squinting nervously at suspiciously wavy horizons, armed with nothing but bravery and a glaring lack of reliable maps. For these mariners, deep water wasn't just a phrase, it was a polite way of saying deep regret. Ancient sailors were sure the sea harbored monstrous krakens and serpents, lurking just beneath the surface, ready to turn their ship into driftwood decor. Cut them some slack. Their wild imaginations had plenty of fuel. Sleep deprivation, creaky wooden boats, and navigation techniques that made sundials look like rocket science, all combined to transform every rogue ripple into either a monster's fin or, at the very least, the world's soggiest death warrant. So hugging the coastline became the norm. No one wanted to star in the calamari special of the day. Tales of ship-devouring beasts popped up faster than you could say, sea biscuit shortage. And while some monsters were just whales, giant squids, or overeager seaweed, these myths gave sailors something to blame for both vanished ships and the soul-crushing boredom between storms. Next time you're casually scrolling through Google Maps, remember, for these early adventurers, every horizon held more mystery and imagined tentacles than comfort. This fearfulness supposedly limited maritime activity, as seen in Romans' confinement to the Mediterranean. Picture a Roman sailor squinting nervously at the vast Atlantic, convinced Poseidon planted a secret self-destruct button on every trireme. Legend has it, Roman ships quivered the moment they left the Mediterranean, as if Atlantic spray turned their planks into soggy spaghetti faster than you can say aqua marina. Thank medieval storytellers and melodramatic historians for this tall tale. They painted Roman naval prowess as parochial, forever stranded by mysterious design flaws, blamed vaguely on too much toga wearing. But let's drop anchor in reality. Romans built ships that took on pirates, storms, and Carthaginians like champs. Their vessels were impressive, just maybe not made for marathon oceanic mosh pits lasting months on end. Romans did sail the Atlantic, just ask the Britons, cruised the Red Sea, and flirted with Indian trade routes. Their ships weren't fragile. They were more like the sea's equivalent of a reliable city bus, not an ocean-crossing race car. So did Roman ships self-destruct at a whiff of open ocean? Absolutely not. More likely, they longed for a nice glass of wine and a siesta. The real reason they hugged the Mediterranean coastline? They preferred the comforts of home. Olives, baths, and decent weather, not battling wind chill on the high seas. Yet brave sailors, with precious cargo, hello garum, did venture beyond the Med, as archaeology loves to remind us. Turns out Roman sailors could outwit pirates, but a chilly Atlantic breeze? Now that's a story to keep the toga parties buzzing. Contrary to such limits, Magellan's voyage famously demonstrated the world's roundness through global circumnavigation. Picture Magellan as the original global tourist, fiercely determined to break records and clock more passport stamps than anyone in history. Legend has it he single-handedly sailed around the globe, obliterating flat Earth theories 1 nautical mile at a time. Reality? A bit less solo heroics, more group project chaos. Magellan himself never made it home to wow the Spanish crowds with tales of round worlds and questionable seafood. His epic journey ended in the Philippines, courtesy of a rather heated disagreement and some remarkably sharp Filipino spears. Of the 5 grand ships he launched, only one sorry vessel crawled back, looking less like a champion and more like it had lost a brawl with a blender. And Magellan? Let's just say his Fitbit would have given up and gone dark. Sorry, legend buffs. If Magellan personally circumnavigated the globe, then by that logic, I personally win every marathon I've ever watched on TV. Still, even without Magellan's final curtain call, his voyage nailed down the planet's roundness, with a generous assist from his perpetually seasick crew. So, while he didn't revolutionize Yelp reviews, he did redraw the world's maps and inadvertently set the stage for future seafood shortages. Before such voyages, civilizations like the Egyptians were believed to stay close to their rivers, not exploring wider seas. Imagine ancient Egyptians clutching the Nile like a toddler hugging their favorite blankie, too nervous to venture into the big, scary sea. That's the myth. Nile-obsessed, sandal-shunning sun worshippers who'd rather chit-chat with a hippo than dip a toe in the Mediterranean. The story paints them as landlocked homebodies, their pyramids as immobile as their travel ambitions. Cue reality check. Egyptians were actually bolder than your cousin who suddenly trades couch potato for globe-trotting backpacker. They built ships, think less basket of reeds, more ancient yacht club, and cruised the Mediterranean and Red Seas, hunting exotic bling. Archaeology spills the tea, ship timbers from Byblos, intricate carvings of cedarwood giants, and trade treasures from Punt, because shopping at the Nile Delta Mall got old. Pharaohs weren't chained to their sphinx-sized staycations. They sailed wide for incense, gems, and glory. Those open sea vessels? Clear proof that Egyptians figured seas were not just angry fish gods' playgrounds, but highways to adventure and treasure. Similarly, Greek navigation is sometimes mischaracterized as mere luck without scientific understanding. Picture ancient Greeks as seafaring gamblers, relying on luck, goat entrails, and the faint hope that an island would pop up before their rations vanished. It's easy to imagine these toga-clad sailors hopping from rock to rock, steered solely by the gods, explaining why so many wound up in Italy when Crete was the intended destination. But here's the twist. Greek navigators weren't just tossing olives and prayers to the sea breeze. Nope, they tracked the stars, not only for spinning epic myths or sketchy horoscopes, decoded wind patterns, and even wielded sundials like ancient GPS gadgets. The Odyssey might read like a prehistoric navigation fail, but the Greeks learned from every watery mishap, gradually mapping coastlines, naming treacherous sandbanks, and timing voyages by the lunar calendar. Their maps? Sure, they looked more like toddler doodles than sleek charts, but at least they kept Greek sailors from drifting aimlessly forever. Meanwhile, geniuses like Eratosthenes measured the Earth itself. Pretty impressive for a crew fueled by anchovies and sheer brilliance. Greek port guides turned salty sea tales into savvy seamanship, centuries before Google My Maps made it trendy. Because myth aside, luck favors the well-prepared, especially when you're dodging both shipwrecks and surprise Roman vacations. These underestimations continue with medieval sailors, who are thought to have used primitive methods like casting sticks into water for navigation. Imagine a fearless medieval sailor squinting at the horizon, armed with nothing but wooden sticks and unshakable optimism. According to popular myth, these daring navigators merely tossed a stick into the water and let fate, or a particularly capricious current, plot their course. Honestly, if sailors truly relied on drifting sticks, the only destination they'd find with any consistency is a shark's dinner table. In reality, their navigational toolkit was less oak lottery and more cosmic precision. Medieval mariners followed the sun, stars, and sometimes the moon, celestial GPS far more reliable than soggy driftwood. They wielded astrolabes and quadrants with practiced hands, not sticks pulled from the plank puff pastry tray. Dead reckoning, estimating position by speed and direction, was their art. Then came the compass, debuting like a medieval GPS in the 12th century, making getting lost just a little less fashionable. Sure, sticks had their role, as sounding lines to measure depth, not as whimsical guides to the new world. So next time a rogue plank floats by, take it as a cue to swab the deck, not to set sail for uncharted adventures. Furthermore, it is often claimed that sailors historically never ventured far beyond sight of land. Imagine every sailor before GPS was basically a nervous road tripper who refused to leave the parking lot. Popular myth insists ancient mariners hugged the coastline like toddlers clinging to their parents in a haunted house, never daring a peek beyond the next headland. If that were true, we'd all still be munching ancient, extra salty sardines, not sushi or tacos. But let's set sail on the facts. Open ocean navigation is so ancient, it predates the first Instagram feud. The Phoenicians, Polynesians, and Vikings didn't just stick to the shoreline, they sailed straight into legend. Polynesians zigzagged across the Pacific using stars, winds, and shell charts. Google Maps? Never heard of it. Vikings ventured west, discovering land so new even Google Earth hadn't caught up. The Greeks and Romans? They cruised the Mediterranean like it was bath time, sun and stars as their only Yelp reviews. Sure, coastal sailing had its perks, especially for pirates and reefs looking for drama. But ask the medieval Europeans or the fearless Norse. The sea's classic Are We There Yet? Started long before SUVs hit the road. The horizon wasn't a limit. It was an open invitation to adventure. And sunburns because SPF was a long way off. And at the very dawn of human movement, some believe prehistoric people didn't use boats at all, somehow managing water crossings on foot. Imagine a world where cavemen crossed oceans powered by sheer willpower, and maybe some soggy, stubborn socks. According to a persistent myth, our prehistoric ancestors stomped across continents and shrugged off oceans with a caveman style, no problem. Sea levels, island chains, and gaping watery voids? Just minor hiccups, like forgetting your club at home. But here's the splash of reality. Early humans weren't afraid to get their feet wet. Evidence pours in from all corners, quite literally. Archaeologists have uncovered ancient dugout canoes and rafts, proving Homo sapiens, and maybe their Neanderthal neighbors, were more Captain Jack Sparrow than landlocked Fred Flintstone. Anyone who thinks people simply strolled to Australia might as well believe Neanderthals invented the boogie board. The oldest evidence for humans in Australia dates back at least 65,000 years, long after the last land bridge took a hike. Turns out, the world's earliest travel agents booked log rafts, not camel caravans, because sometimes you just have to paddle.